What's up, Skirt Sub Squad?
Did you just take my line? It's Samantha.
And Melissa.
I'm going to actually tell you guys how it is right now. It was so funny.
We couldn't even make it up. I'm going to do it. I'm going to wear it in public.
Then she looks at me and she goes, that's what Jesus is for.
We are about normalizing things that are hard to talk about.
So I was like, deer in headlights, skirts out. But keep your panties on. Hey guys, it's Samantha.
Oh, and Melissa. If you hadn't figured it out.
Yeah. So we chit chat before we get into our recordings now, and people who pay the subscription get to kind of hear our befores and the chit chat after with our guests. And so that's where we forget sometimes to be like, it's Samantha and Melissa. So it's like, oh, now we're live.
We are.
Okay. So we were sitting here going back and forth on like, what's our fail? We never fail. Blah, blah, blah. So then something came to me. One of the things that we did, that my family did over the break, it was Labor Day. We didn't have any plans, but like I just woke up that morning and I was like, I want to do something outside, and our boat hasn't been working, so we haven't been able to go out onto the lake. And I love this summer and taking the boat out and just getting to float in the middle of the lake and tube and all that stuff. And so I just was like, I need time on water. And so we were like, well, what can we do? And Simon goes, well, we haven't kayaked this year. And so we decided to take the kids kayaking. So we had Nora, the 3-year-old, Amelia, she just turned 10 during break, and Logan, who he just turned 14. So he was 13 at the time. And
Did Amelia and Logan both have their own kayak?
Yeah.
Or was a double?
Yeah, no. Everyone had their own kayak. Logan had a great time. Amelia struggled for a little bit, and she actually got stuck on the top of like one of the like little rapid waterfall things, and that was a little traumatic for her. Yeah, so she ended up actually losing her kayak, and she was like stuck on top of the waterfall. It was stressful. It was very, very stressful. But when we were getting packed up and getting ready to leave, Simon had the idea. He says, look, like Ada died, like 6 months ago at this point? And he goes, and you haven't been bonding with the puppies at all. And he was like, and it's time. Like, you need to start making a connection with them because they're here and they're only 2. So they're going to be here for a hot while. And I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. Like, I really haven't. Like, I haven't spent a lot of time with them, like myself personally with them. I just haven't wanted to, which is kind of sad and that sucks for them. But working on it. So he suggested that I pick one of the puppies and bring them. And I don't know why, but I gravitate towards the boy puppy, Madden. So we have a boy and a girl, Madden and Matea. And I don't know if like I just maybe subconsciously haven't wanted to bond with another female. I don't
Because of Ada, yeah.
Maybe, like, I don't know. But, like, Madden, he is a snuggle bug. Like, he's the one that likes to snuggle, and Matea doesn't. So maybe that's the other part of it. Like, Madden likes to be attached to me.
He makes it easy to love.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, I guess we can bring Madden. And so I kayaked with Madden on my kayak. And this is, like, the kind where you sit on top of it. So you, like, kind of have to balance. And so Madden and I balanced together on the kayak and did the rapids, and he did great. He loves water. And so
amazing.
Watching him swim and stuff, he used Ada's life jacket. And yeah, we spent the whole day with him on the lake, and I really did bond with him. And to where like I have found myself, we went camping. We talked about this in the last episode. We went camping and we were like, oh, we should bring one of the dogs. And we were like, I go, we should probably bring Matea because I took Madden last time. And then I like was just like shoulder slumped, and I was like, but then Madden will be sad. And then like he'll be
Can you
alone.
not take both?
We could have, but it was just
a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot.
You also had those extra kids for Logan's birthday.
Exactly. And so actually we ended up not taking either of them, and we took Kaya instead, the 13-year-old husky.
Which actually makes sense that it might be kind of she's a little more laid back.
Yeah. She doesn't leave Simon's side and was just real chill. And the puppies have been pretty mean to her. And so we had the neighbor kids taking care of the dogs that we left at home. And so it just made us feel a little more comfortable to not leave dogs that don't get along with the kids, like, because anything
Yeah.
could happen and, it wouldn't be their fault. It's, that would be traumatizing for everyone. So we ended up taking Kaya so that the puppies who get along, like, nothing can happen.
Right.
So yeah, I caught myself thinking about Madden and his feelings and like, oh, and so then I was like, oh, I think it worked. I think we're bonding.
I'm changing my fail.
I think that was a long story. Sorry. That
It
was,
was a great story, and
isn't it?
it made me change my fail.
Okay. So ultimately, for some reason, on some level, I had not connected with any dogs since Ada died. And, Simon pointed it out, and I have made an effort, and I do feel bonded to Madden, and I like his snuggles. So
I
we're getting
think
there.
it's beautiful that Simon could, well, he waited for the right moment to say it to you. He didn't say it like right after Ada was gone,
Right.
unless he did and you just didn't left that part out.
Um, no, I actually tried to. I think we talked about this last season. I actually tried to get rid of the puppies after she died. I was like, I just don't even want these dogs. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's beautiful that he could approach you and be like, "Hey, Sam, I think it's time that you kind of open up. Like,
yeah,
they
yeah,
need you and you need them."
yeah.
I really
So,
like that. And you
thank-
did. You heard it. You heard
thanks.
it,
I
which I
did. I
think
gave it a
is,
try.
yeah, it's like really hard and important part of a
Yeah.
relationship is hearing the hard things and knowing that the person is coming from a place of love and
Yeah. You know what's actually kind of what also helped? And it was, we talk about this in our recordings sometimes, and I actually think it's like during the recordings that are coming out for season 4 that what's that word? Synchronicity?
synchronicity.
Like when something is supposed to be like grabbing your attention, like it pops up multiple times.
Yeah.
So Simon said this shortly after I had a one-on-one conversation with Jennifer that you guys met at the last episode, the founder of Canine Assistant. I was having a private conversation with her, and we were talking about, when the dog that we're really bonded with dies, and we were talking about how I'm just struggling to bond with the puppies. And she just, like was very gentle about like, saying like, you got to give them a chance. It's not fair, to him to not have that bonding. Cause I think I had, at that point feeling like I probably bond with him more. And she was able to kind of like give suggestions on how to like connect with him. And I go, okay. So that was 2 people in like a really short period. Be like, no, let's start spending time with them and you'll have a connection and you'll build a bond and one of them will
Yeah.
attach to you. And yeah. So it was just one of those things.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So what did you change yours to?
So you being vulnerable and talking about the dogs, and then you brought up Kaya, it made me realize I have a fail of last episode. And actually, you heard it last episode, but it's something that I struggle with all the time, is I have a discrimination against huskies.
Okay, you did mention that. Like, what that's not the first incident that you've had with a husky?
No, so the thing is, when I first moved here, Brett had
Oh, Simon's dogs.
yeah, well, he and his own. Honestly, Simon's dogs were good.
Really
It
aren't.
no, they weren't, but they were not.
You're talking about like Yume and Falcor.
Yume is Brett's dog, and she's awful.
It was supposed to be his dog, but I feel like Simon took care of her the most.
Oh, Simon didn't live there.
Oh, that's right. He did leave Yume with him. That's right.
I thought it was always Brett's dog, but anyway, the point is, she was not a good dog. Waverly, who I had owned for at that point probably like 12 or 13 years, had
Mm.
never ever been attacked by another dog, and then Yume attacked her twice.
Oh
And the
no.
first time, like, she was in so much shock that she was just shaking for like probably a good hour afterwards. And she
Which
just,
one?
Yume attacked Waverly.
Waverly. Which of your dogs was the one that ended up hiding in the closet for a long time?
Kal-El.
Kal-El. Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, everywhere I moved, he liked to find the closet wherever we lived, and that was his house. He just loved being in the closet. But anyway, so, and then, yeah, they were just really badly behaved. And here's the thing. I know, because like I also have a pit bull. Like I know that dogs get bad raps and it's not their fault. It's just not. And I
Yeah.
know huskies have a lot of energy and they need to be with the right family.
Hmm.
But I think that's what made me mad at the dog park is I feel like you need to know, like be educated about the dog you're gonna get. Like
Yeah.
huskies are not bad dogs. They're not bad dogs, and I know that. And so I just wanted to kind of say, I'm sorry for being like, and it was a fucking husky.
Well, I think we all do that. I don't know. I definitely discriminate against small dogs. Actually, recently I was looking, I ended up on a apartment website, and you know how they list like, oh, we love your furry animals, dogs welcome or whatever. But
But
then they
not
have
these
this,
ones.
right, then they have this like long ass list of dogs that aren't accepted. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, well, let's see this list. And I'm reading through it. And of course, it's like nothing with pit or pit mix, nothing with shepherd or shepherd mix. And then there was like some breeds that
Huskies.
I'd never heard of before. And then I started cracking up because then it started moving into like smaller dogs. And it like specifically
Really?
it specifically mentioned a Basenji. And I was like, that's a really random dog to decide, like, oh, not a Basenji. Like, one, they're like hardly ever owned. And two, like, I don't know.
I
That's just,
think they are I think they do have like a thing for being very like, what's the word? Aggressive, but more, I guess I would call it loyal. Don't
well,
touch my owner.
I don't see a fucking chihuahua on it. And I feel like they attack people
I
more than
know.
any big dog. Like,
I
the fuck?
know. And then see, that's the other thing. And I do not have an affinity for small dogs. I like
I
larger
don't. I
dogs.
don't like small dogs. They are
But
huntable size, and I don't
what
like them.
but I really do 100% believe that it's because they're small. And so the owners who get them, they don't train them because they're like, oh, it's just small. It's not gonna, can't really do anything. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter
yeah.
if it's jumping up on
And
somebody's
everything's so
calf or
cute because it's a
ankle.
little dog.
And so I do think that that's a disservice to the dogs.
Yeah.
Um, and look, I don't own a small dog and I haven't trained one, so I'm not exactly out there doing the Lord's work.
Little
But
pea brains. I'm just kidding. Sorry, guys.
no, they can be really smart, but I do think that people
Yeah.
I think it's maybe not always their fault. Like
Right.
actually usually it's probably not.
Yeah. Working in the animal hospital, I definitely gained this like dislike and disdain towards small dogs because it's like, when you go touch someone's small dog to like perform like the exam or whatever, and the dog starts snipping at you and like bites you.
Snarling.
Yeah, the owner's like, oh, you're so silly. And it's not fucking silly. Like if a shepherd did this, like it would not be funny. Like, why are we
Exactly.
like treating the small dogs differently than the big dogs? Like, no, your dog just bit me. Like, it's not
Yeah.
cute. And like, I just still to this day, I am more likely to get into a tight space with a shepherd growling at me than like a chihuahua. Like, it's just
Yeah.
not going to happen.
And that's
So,
fair. Yeah, I
uh,
grew up hating small dogs because like my dad hated them and he's like, they're
yeah.
just stupid. And so I was always like, yeah, they're so stupid. And I still don't love them, but there are some small dogs that
Yeah.
I love. Like Michelle has a little tiny dog and her name is Lollipop and she's
Aw.
so, but I do try to remind myself, like, okay, but
Yeah.
that's what I did. See, I did the same thing with the Huskies, though.
Yeah.
I have to
Yeah.
remember it's not their fault.
Well, yeah,
That's ours.
that's our little TED talk on small little rat dogs that we are learning to love. Today it's October. So October, we usually talk about domestic violence and so we tried to pull again, I think we talked about this in the last episode that just people come to us and conversations come
crazy.
to us that just are meant to have. And so someone who found us on our network. Her name's Cara, and her background is teaching women how to be assertive, and it fits perfectly because in her, full-time job, what she does is she teaches people what sexual assault is in like college age kids, so that they can, one, prevent it, one, help men understand what no is and the signs of something not being okay, and helps when the girls be more assertive so that they don't end up in situations that
Yeah.
they don't need to be in. And it just fits perfectly with October.
Yeah. One of my favorite things, and I'm pretty sure it was her that said this. She didn't just talk about what no looks like, she talked about what yes looks like. When you're
Yes.
like
Yeah.
consensual sex. And I
Uh-huh.
just loved that. I loved that, like putting that kind of spin on it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. She was like, I'm not teaching the kids to be afraid of sex and not like sex. So she was like, everyone should feel comfortable with sex feels good. It's supposed to be fun. And so she teaches
yes.
kids and coaches them on sex is, I say kids, like they're young adults, like they're 20, but teaches them sex is fun. And that's probably what we could use in the school system. It sounds scary to say that, but we use the scare tactic.
And that
And
doesn't do anything except for create a taboo and then create like this interest
yeah,
because, like, oh, what's that? Like, you know,
yeah, yeah. It's such a hard topic, and I don't really know what the answer is. I'm not gonna lie, but I love her approach. I love what she does, and I try to take what she says about assertiveness and try to carry that into my day since we've had that conversation.
yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely took
Yeah.
something out of this.
Yeah. It's great, you guys. So take it away, Kara.
Today we have with us Kara Tuttle. She's the author of Drowning into Timidity. Did I say that word right?
You said yes.
Is it drowning in timidity?
Yes.
Okay.
That's like a tricky word, timidity.
I know. I regretted it after I've done it because when I've had to say it, then I'm like, am I putting extra syllables in there? But
Right. Well, thanks for joining us, Kara. We're excited to talk about this because, as you have mentioned and talking to you briefly, women are raised to be polite to be respectful. And it sounds like you have a way that's bullshit.
yes. Yes, that's a great way to put it. I agree.
Yeah. So tell us about it.
Sure. I wrote a book during the pandemic. I'm one of the people, who did that. And that was good for me because I needed to figure out something to do. Because my work changed dramatically overnight.
Totally.
They sent us home, and I was like, what am I going to do with myself? But I was really lucky that this woman who had seen me speak a few years prior reached out to me on LinkedIn. And this is like day 3 after they would start to close things, and send people home. And she really was like, why haven't you written a book? And I was like, like, that's great in theory, but when are you going to sit down and do that? But it was really the perfect time. So
the world was like, you're going to sit down and do it now.
yes, no, she was really perfect for me too, because I wouldn't have done it otherwise, right? And her name's Linda Ellis Eastman, and she's helped a lot of women publish books, and she's a really great coach for this. But I had connected with her. And she was really trying to do a nice thing too, because of what was going on in the world. So she was like, I'm doing these scholarships, and I just think you have a book in you. We've got to figure out what this is.
Interesting.
And I was talking, yeah, I know, it was just perfect timing.
Can I ask you real quick, like how did she find you? What made her come to you and say, you've got a book in you?
Yeah. What were you posting that caught her attention?
That is a great question. She's in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. So like regionally, I think we had some overlapping contacts, where she had seen that. But I do the career, which has had, some different roles, has been focused on empowering women.
Okay.
And so I think that was what came to her attention. And in my day job, I focus on sexual misconduct prevention. And so that is sexual harassment, sexual assault, stalking, dating violence, domestic violence, any of the ways that people broadly, but a lot of women are impacted by that.
Okay.
But what I often speak on as a speaker might be for a women's luncheon or a breakfast. Sometimes it's Women's History Month. Sometimes it's the related Domestic Violence Awareness Month or Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I think that we had overlapped in some of those spheres. And she did say, like, what do you want to write about? And I said, I want it to be broader than the work that I do in my day job, because people are really coming to talk to me like on the side about assertiveness. Now, they weren't calling it that necessarily, but it was like, I have this tough conversation that I want to have with my supervisor, or boundary setting in a relationship, or salary negotiation, something like that. And they were just wanting a minute of my time here and there. And I'm happy to give it. It's like the women need the support of the women for sure. And I'm thrilled that they think that I am an assertive person. I have advice to give. And we had these meetings, but really what had been kicking around in my mind is oh, that's okay. Is the quick cram session, or the like, yeah, I'll give you this like these quick tips or a script, is not the best we can do, right? Like, it's better than nothing for sure, but it's not the best we can do. And the reason
go deeper.
Yes, the reason that people think that I'm assertive is it's a daily practice for me. It's like the way I communicate. It's actually linked to, increased health outcomes and positive, healthier relationships. So the book was where I could talk about that, in a fuller context, and touch on assertiveness in the workplace, assertiveness in your personal relationships, assertiveness in your sexual relationships, and the real pros to embracing it more fully.
Yeah, because how do you differentiate assertiveness from aggressiveness? Because I feel like it feels aggressive, at least to me.
Yes. And that's a great question. And there are a lot of ways we gender that, right? So where people will think if a woman is being assertive, it feels aggressive to them, because sometimes, like, even still, we're not used to it. Or for women, being that direct or sometimes forceful or not letting something go can feel aggressive to them, right? But if you look at male models of leadership, we respect that in men. We think they're tenacious, that they're like hungry, or they're ambitious, or that they're strong. Yeah. And sometimes it is bad behavior. Sometimes it's aggressive behavior, and it can be steamrolling or bullying, and we don't want to be there. Like, that's not what I'm recommending. But we don't need to be timid or passive aggressive either, which is on the other side. So this is about landing in the middle of those.
Yeah.
And being present, communicating clearly, not expecting our partners or other, friends or boss to read our mind, but engaging fairly and directly. And that's really what assertive is. That's all. But we have to redefine it, because people are thinking that it means aggressive behavior. And you can win some short-term battles with aggressive behavior, but you won't win the war, right?
Fair.
That will actually teach people not to engage with you, not to want to call you, to match bad behavior with bad behavior. And we don't want to be in that toxic space either, but we do want you to feel safe, to feel heard, to be seen, to be a contributor, in a meeting, and engage fairly with other people.
Is there an example that you have where a person may answer in a traditional way versus how they would answer in a assertive way?
There are lots of examples of timidity, right? So I think that one day when I was venting, I was like, we're drowning in timidity, and people, that needs to be your book. And I was like, oh, I better write that down.
I love that.
Write that down somewhere, And so that's actually what that came from is,
and when you put it that way, I can literally see myself in those situations where it's like, this is really uncomfortable, so I'm just going to and walk away.
Yes. And there are times when that might be the best strategy, but we don't want to like default to that, So yes. So a lot of, because I work on a college campus, so I talk to like a lot of young women students, and we have a lot of young entry-level employees. And they're the ones where I've found myself giving like repeat advice, where I'm starting to them and I'm saying, like, when you go into a meeting, are you sitting at the table, or are you choosing the seat that's like along the wall, and why? Sometimes that's appropriate if you're the lowest ranked and there's too many people, but sometimes that's choosing passivity and not positioning yourself for influence. Or that's a quick tip that I give, talk to some women, like audiences that are like over 50 or they're retired. And so I'm like, talk to them. And I'm like, if you're on a plane, do you ever claim the armrest? Or do you fold yourself in and you don't?
Oh my goodness.
And you don't think that's for you. And listen, if, or on the subway, are you standing or giving a seat? if on a sidewalk, are you always moving out of the way? And I mean, like, I don't want you to play chicken and run people off the road. That's not the advice either, but that's going to tell you a little bit about who you are in a situation and whether or not you feel entitled to take up an appropriate amount of space or the same space in the world as other people. And a lot of times women have been really socialized to be pleasant as a priority, right? Like to maintain the peace rather than to advocate for their own needs or their safety. And so it depends what we're asking for, right? But so for women who are trying to advance their careers, I need them to sit at the table. I need them to talk in the meeting, and with less pause and hemming and hawing. Also, you need to like own your ideas. And so that's the type of mindset that I talk to them about shifting from passivity to assertiveness, like in the workplace. So there's an example. And start small. It's like anything else. Go ahead and start small. We want you to like build comfort and think of this as muscle or strength building, and so you're just going to say one thing in the meeting. You're going to contribute one idea, and then I like try to make them laugh too, because humor is great, but we all know the people who take up too much space in any conversation, too much space in a meeting. And so I'm like, are their ideas amazing? And everybody's like usually no, just, we're like talking a lot. And I'm like, yeah, you have one good idea. There's a reason we hired you. There's a reason that your voice, your identity is really useful here. But if you don't talk, it's not being heard. But, and I try to charge like the people who work for me. I'm like, I need you to represent our office in this meeting, and not be invisible or be quiet or not talk about what our perspective might be. And so we can't let the very assertive or aggressive people dominate the world. Then it's not serving the rest of us.
Yeah, I feel as you explain that, like what I envision and, has happened in the past is it's the male boss and we're having a meeting and then you do contribute a little bit of an offering of an idea and it's yeah, and then brushed off and continue the conversation. So like, what do you say when it's just brushed off and you're like tend to be brushed off?
Yes. And what can also happen is then like, Brother Bob says the same idea 2 minutes later and then
oh my gosh,
so
every
annoying.
time.
So the stuff like that happens. And there's solid research on this, right? So sometimes people think that like I'm a grumpy feminist. And I'm like, look, there's all the research in the world, all this. Okay. Read the Harvard Business Review if you need it. People observe meetings. We still see a lot of these things play out in sexist ways. And yeah, we have had like women as a whole have made a lot of gains in a lot of professions over the past few decades. But it's often described as low-level sexism, still happens day in and day out.
I think, if you don't mind, I think a lot of people get confused with like, and it's the same, I see it with people being with racism too. It's like, well, just because it's not on a conscious level, they think, well, I'm not being sexist. I'm not being racist. Yes. I don't do it on purpose. Well, that's not what we're saying. We're just saying that there is a level of racism or sexism going on because it's ingrained in our society.
It is. And so it's like, the harm still happens, or like, this is the difference between intent and impact, right? And I know there are people with great intentions who are just used to the usual patterns of things, who either don't know they're doing it or don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And it does help to confront them with evidence, right? So not just like Kara's opinions, I'll like walk around talking about things, but it does really help when I show them a graph, or they say things like, well, I don't know why all the women of color are leaving the company. And I'm like, well, things like that meeting where they get brushed off, that adds up over time. They don't feel seen and valued. They don't feel like they're able to do the work we hired them to do. They're, eventually going to go where the work feels more meaningful to them. And so the small stuff, which is the privileged person's way of thinking about it, the small stuff absolutely adds up.
Oh yeah. It's not so small anymore.
Oh, it's not so small. It's actually like there's an iceberg graphic I use when I'm talking about harassment in particular. There's this iceberg graphic, which is like below the waterline is a very broad base of behaviors that people think they don't need to address because they don't want to overreact. They don't want to report those. They don't want to get anyone into trouble over what they're deciding is one comment or they didn't really mean it, something like that. So we're really good at talking ourselves into not
Damn.
overreacting or minding our own business. That's where everybody's like, I did hear it, but I'm just going to mind my own business. Well, then nothing changes.
That's why I won't let my kids work in the restaurant, because it's so common for like everyone to be touchy. And like if one of the guys like slaps your butt and you like turn around and you're like, excuse me, then everyone around will be like, he does that to everyone.
You're such a prude. Yeah.
Yes. Right. So we've really minimized. I mean, in the law, by the way, these things could be sexual assault contact. It could be like forcible fondling. That creepy term's still around in the law, but that's like, in different state statutes, like we've decided those things are wrong, but we've told people, and particularly young parenting adults, it's normal behavior, and that like if you voice your discomfort, you're the problem. So my book is trying to correct some of that actually and be like, no, you have a right not to have, your ass slapped in the restaurant.
Exactly.
Like, no one should be grabbing your butt. That's not actually fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So actually, since I feel like we can all picture this scenario and this scenario. So let's say that is what happened, and the individual is like, yeah, I don't like that. And everyone's like, oh, he does that to everyone. Like, how would I respond if that were me?
So you have more time than you think. Okay. So I have a lot of people who, when they start thinking about this, they're like, oh, they think I'm so quick. They're like, oh, you're so quick and you're so feisty.
Right.
But it takes me 2 or 3 days to think of what I should have said.
Right.
And that's okay.
That's how we all are. I feel that's how I am.
Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, like, listen, I do that too, where I'm like, oh, days later, I'm like,
only I had
this, and I crafted my whole argument where I'm going to tell them how it is. Yep. No, like, but you do get better with practice, So I have really practiced this. First of all, it was like just for my own self, like I wanted to be like, I had like girl power, thoughts in junior high and high school, but I didn't have a voice to those. Now later on, because I'm a nerd, then I'm like, I got my degree in women's studies. So I've like really got the like academic credentials behind it now, but I had to do the work myself, and law school will help, it really teaches you to jump in there. But I had to do that. So I'm like, yeah, I've got years of practice, I've got like years of practice doing this. So it seems like I'm really quick, but I'm having those same pauses, like
getting
reactions
thrown off.
Like, did they just say what I thought they said? And not wanting to overreact. But I've learned to jump in and clarify, so now I'll be like, I'm sorry, what? Or you can just start with not laughing at the joke. That's a great place to start. It's such a baby step place to start. Is better yet, make them explain it.
That's what I was just about to say.
So you would stop and be like, did you just touch my butt?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's
why is that okay?
It's not okay.
Right.
Like actually, then everybody's like, yeah, that's not okay. So that's if you push the person and be like, you touched my butt. And what is very sad is society then will say you overreacted. Yes. But if you can have the like, wait, what is happening moment that is a little less aggressive, although I will defend your right to be aggressive in that situation. I really will. You need your anger validated. You need your bodily autonomy validated. I'm happy to do that. But that feels risky because people do then shift focus to the person who is outraged, about what happened to them in a way that's unfair. So a great tactic is simply being like, did you just touch my butt? Or not laughing at the joke, or saying like, I don't get it, and just kind of staring at them. This is so good. I mean, it's actually a great tactic because then it just kind of falls flat. And then the truth of the joke, which might be their racism or their sexism, is just hanging out there. But you didn't actually say, you shouldn't have said that joke was racist, which you can, again. Yeah. But that doesn't feel safe. And sometimes the problem's our boss, or sometimes like, the person's stronger, like if there's safety concerns, then you might want to try a different tactic to address the behaviors. But
can I share a quick little? So I remember one time I was working at a quilt shop, and one of the reps came to show me some fabrics, and it was a guy who'd been in the business forever. Yeah. And he says, after you, and I'm going up the stairs, and he said, what did he say? He said something, this is a job where or this is a moment where it's like polite of me to get to see the behind of a woman because I'm walking up with something really rude and inappropriate. And I was just like, whoa. I turned around and I said, wow. And he goes, oh, well, I can get away with that because I'm an old man. And I said, can you though? And then
That's great.
he got so uncomfortable because he knew, because then it was on him to answer and to have a
Yeah.
reason. Like, and he realized there's nothing I can say because no, that's not cool. He knew it. And so he
Yes.
immediately goes, so yeah, it was so funny because he goes, so this, what's the state bird of Georgia again? And he totally just pivoted to something that made no sense.
That's great.
And
Like it was, you didn't risk your job, but you
Yeah.
reacted. You disrupted the moment. You prompted some further reflection on his part, like I think that's like an excellent way. And a lot of us aren't doing that. So that's a way, to like, they think, a lot of the old men do think that like the world's now overreacting and oversensitive and it's all been fine. And I'm like, but it's not fine. It's not fine. And we don't want you to continue doing it. And we shouldn't have to do the work to make them change, but nobody else is the sad.
there you go.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's like it's not our fault, but at the same time, by not speaking up and being like taking it more seriously, like it's not going to get any better or change.
It's really not. And like if you're the target or the victim in a situation, frankly, I expect less from you. Just survive it. Like just
fair.
do what you can to hopefully minimize your risk and get out. But if you're the bystander, then I expect more.
Let me just tell you the types of things that I experienced and heard in the restaurant. Again, why my kids will never work in the restaurant. I need this day off because I have to take my 3-year-old to the doctor. Mm-hmm. You can have that off if you suck my dick.
Right.
And then, everyone around is like, oh. And I'm like, and he was serious. That's the sad part. He was serious.
Yes.
What else did I hear? Like, it's just stuff like that.
It's very explicit, like the service industry. So, the women in particular who work in restaurants, also, like LGBTQ people who work in restaurants also are experiencing so much harassment, right? Bartenders, servers, hostesses, like when Me Too was happening a few years ago, and there was a lot of talk, we saw a lot of policies changes in corporate workplaces respond in some ways, but there are whole industries, and this is a perfect one, that were left behind, right?
Yeah.
Where we know the behavior is rampant and tolerated. It becomes
just part of the
conversation.
Yeah.
It is widely accepted. In hotels also, people who are doing cleaning or janitorial services, face a lot of risk and don't have a lot of workplace protections. So where there's shifts, where the work is hourly, we have so much work to do in addressing sexual harassment, because, the boss means it till he's called on it, and then it's a joke, right?
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm. But like if they'll get the blowjob, then fine,
right.
But and sometimes,
honestly, even then he'll probably still say, "Oh, it was just a joke," but she went for it, and who might have turned it? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's
so
always
he's going to say it's consensual. He's going to say like, we liked each other. It was fine. And we're not addressing the like power differentials in that, like, you need to take your kid to the doctor, like that's a real need. And we don't have workplace protections or sufficient time off for, healthcare, childcare. And so those are ripe for abuse in the workplace.
So you mentioned that you do or did work on a campus, and I feel like I heard that in the first few months of school starting on campus is like pretty high in sexual assault and sexual harassment.
Yes, it is. So like 20 years of my career have been on college campuses. So that's like really the day job. But yeah, so the risk is high. We call this the red zone, actually. Like it has a term.
Like this time frame?
It is. There's a real seasonal nature to the risk of sexual assault for college students. And it goes along with the academic calendar. So for students, if you think of like the first year student, same for sophomores, they have a heightened risk too. They're moving to a new place. They need to make new friends. They might have an absence of parental supervision for the first time. They might experience increased availability to alcohol or drugs, sometimes for the first time. And it's very exciting for them. It's very fun, but there's also a lot of social activity. And sometimes this is connected to the athletic season because we have social activities related to that, so anytime there's going to be increased drinking, we're going to have an increased risk of sexual assault. And so this is why the students face this risk, right? In August, September, and October on most campuses. That's if they follow the semester schedule, that's the period of heightened risk. And it's because we're just kind of throwing them into this new social situation. And so we do try to do a lot of prevention education and like bystander training with students at that time, because we know that most sexual assaults that occur on a college campus are happening in that time frame.
That's so interesting because I can see how education's important. I kind of, as you were talking, remembered being that age. I was actually a little younger.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and I remember like you go into a situation where you're in college and it's like, here I am. I don't really know the rules of this game. So I'm going to sit back and I'm just going to let things happen and watch. And that must be pretty normal. And you're kind of like trying to like build a new boundary system almost.
Yes.
And I think that the education is really important because you can have someone tell you, hey, no, that's not normal. It's okay to react this way and have these boundaries up. And don't let anybody tell you, oh, you just don't know the thing. You just don't know how it goes because you're so young or naive or whatever.
Yes. I mean, that is exactly what we're trying to do. There is no consistency in the sexual education that young adults, really globally, but like I'm more focused on the US. So I know more about the US, but there is no consistency yet in what, if any, sex ed they're getting.
Right.
So they're getting to college from all these different places. And some of them have had experience, like in-person experience, but a lot of them haven't actually. So if we look at Generation Z, if we look at like today's young college.
Oh, I remember you saying that the students lie.
Oh yeah. Well, like that's true. That's true for us. That's true for them. You know what I mean? They're saying they're doing way more than they're doing, the same way that like, boys in particular did when
we're talking about how much sex they do have. Okay.
Oh yeah. So they do to each other, especially because it is new norms, new world. Who am I in this environment? And listen, thank God I'm not in it. I don't want to be that age. I love being this age. I don't need new friends. I got plenty of friends. I know who I am. I got boundaries. But this is like really hard for really the 16 to 24-year-olds. That's a real age range of heightened risk for them.
Yeah.
And I think we can just do better than them learning the hard way. I mean, surely we can then give them accurate information. And if we do have sex ed, I would love for it to include consent education and boundary setting and boundary setting is assertiveness. That's what this is. And bystander intervention. So what do I do if I see something and my friend is in trouble? You have to be assertive to be a good active bystander, right? So for me, these things are all connected. And we have in the US had an expectation that schools will offer, if not require, what we call bystander intervention training for about 10 years now. So there's some good news in this story, right? Is that they're getting in college more education on these topics than ever before.
So the bystander interventions that I remember are confront, delegate, distraction, document, and delay. It sounds like the example that you just gave is distract.
Distract and check in. I mean, it can be a combo. So like you're acting like you need her to go to the bathroom with you.
Is that a delay?
Delays also, like whatever works. We'll take whatever works. If you think your friends are the problem, which sometimes they are, it's not, we don't only know the potential victim. We also know the friend who gets too nasty or too drunk or what, so you can go up to him and be like, hey, I think your car's getting towed. That disrupts the moment. You can separate the parties, you can check in with the person. But I also teach, so like in the fraternities, if they're hosting the parties, somebody's responsible for party patrol.
Okay.
They call it different things. So they have sober monitors, right? The person who's not supposed to drink, who is somewhat responsible for safety. So if you're a new member and you see a problem, but you don't know what to do, or you think they're going to get mad if I talk about like the senior who's doing something inappropriate, they should be able to go to party patrol or the sober monitor, who should not be a new member if they're doing this correctly, and say like, hey, I don't know about that situation over there. Or I saw, some like a really, really drunk girl being led to, a bedroom, and I'm not sure that that's fine, right? You don't have to know what you're seeing. You don't have to over respond. We're telling them like, we're not expecting them to call the police, except when you need to call the police, then please call the police. But you can delegate to that person to go look into the situation.
So I've never heard of a sober monitor. Do they? I mean, like, obviously,
but I didn't go to college.
It makes sense. Well, yeah, fair. But I was never in any fraternities or sororities, I mean. But is that like a thing? Like they have to have at every party? Is that a real thing, or is it like, oh,
the look on her face?
Have this?
Yeah, I'm like, it depends. So I'm like, my answer, like, it is a real thing that many teams, student organizations, sororities, fraternities, like we try to cover all of them. It is a real thing because they get additional training. So they might get like some sexual misconduct prevention training or bystander intervention training. They should also get host responsibility training or like party host training. And schools have different policies, but they definitely have like alcohol policies. Some schools say you can't have alcohol at any event. Some schools say you can have alcohol with certain parameters, right? So some schools say you can have beer only, but not liquor, and so there's no one rule. And some counties are dry counties where like, so it depends where the school is. It depends on if it's public or private. It depends on if it's religious affiliated, but lots of schools have lots of policies about the social event, and if the organizations follow the policies, those events should be safer.
Okay.
Yes. But they are young adults. Okay. So like, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And actually, the organizations or the schools, like that have more money, often are able to have safer events. So sometimes the schools are able to hire bartenders to come in and host, like to be a licensed bartender at the party.
Because they have to monitor
I feel better about that, Or sometimes the students can bring their alcohol. The students of legal drinking age can bring their alcohol and like check it in, and the bartender is distributing a certain number of drinks. But there's
interesting.
Like
different than when I was young.
It is very different.
I think we're probably like similar to the same age, but like it's 20 years. Wow.
It shouldn't be a free-for-all to address some of the risks of yesteryear, but sometimes they don't follow the rules, and then the parties aren't as safe as they could be. And so for us too, we really want the young people to know that like the alcohol policy is actually connected to sexual misconduct prevention, because overwhelmingly what we're seeing on a college campus is alcohol facilitated sexual assault.
Fair.
It's
makes sense.
It's not the only way it can happen, for sure. Like nobody has to be drinking for sexual assault to happen.
No, but like when you're impaired,
yes,
it's going to go up.
The risk goes up of both being victimized and perpetrating, because like if you consume and to the point of intoxication or certainly incapacitation, you are not going to be good at reading the other's behavior. You're not going to be good at knowing how much they've had to drink or assessing how intoxicated they are.
Oh, so are you able to teach the young men how to assess that, even if they're the ones drinking? Like, do they even worry about that?
Good question.
If you talk to like young men today, they will tell you that their fear of being accused of sexual assault is very, like their fear of being accused is not matching up with reality. Now, I know that like they could be accused, they could commit sexual assault, but they're really, really worried about that. So I try to be like, then you really need to be clear about obtaining consent, So like, how do I use that fear to reach them then? Because I don't want them to be like, you just never know. And it's like the game of roulette. I want them to be like, no, there are ways we can reduce the risk of you being accused, And so
Right.
there's research on that. And there is research that shows that men, we're back to assertiveness, that men overestimate women's sexual interest in them.
Ah.
And women say, oh, I was just being polite so that I don't get harassed. Right. So we have like this disconnect happening. And this is for women and men of all ages. This is not just college students.
Right.
Actually.
Yeah.
That women think we're being polite so that we can navigate the world safely. And men are being like, she smiled at me. She must love me.
That's an A.
Yep.
And so, and sometimes people get really annoyed, but it's not my research, I mean, again,
Right.
you want the citations, I'm happy to share it. There's plenty of studies on this. And so yes, the answer is yes, that we do talk to the young men and they're like, okay. And I have really sincerely engaged young men who want to learn and who are worried about what goes on in their student organizations and the world has changed because they don't just want to meet with like me and my team because they have to. They want more of our time than like, I'm like, I can't meet with you every week, because they really do care.
Oh.
They don't want to tolerate that kind of harm in their midst, but they don't always know what to do. They're young, so it's really fun to work with them because there is sincere interest and they're curious. And so we do teach them things to say, ways to not kill the vibe, because they're like, well, I don't want to.
Do you consent? And then
Yes,
suddenly it's
or they're like, we filmed a video. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
no, that's not going to work, for so many reasons. But but like, I'm like, listen, nobody's going to be mad at you if you pause and say like, is this okay?
Yeah.
Do you like this? Like, nobody's going to be mad. The next day when they're talking about it to their friends, they're just going to say you're considerate. You're going to get a good reputation. Actually, this is going to be fine. This is going to be fine. So the laws, the policies often don't require a verbal yes, like I'm 100% fine if they get the verbal yes. I like words. Words are great. Words are
Right.
cute. But most of the policies are saying that consent can be conveyed through words and or actions. But that's where students sometimes say it's gray area. And so we try to teach them that, like, look, if it feels gray area, you got to clarify though. You don't get to just like keep going, right? So a person shouldn't have to fight you off. I think of what we were taught. We were taught to like knee the attacker in the groin and yell no, or they thought we were going to like blow the rape whistle,
Right.
These ideas that
it's not really
are fine.
Yeah.
But it's not what most people do. Like I have never in 20 years had anyone be like, well, he tried to attack me and I blew my rape whistle.
Yeah.
And if you have a whistle, blow the whistle in their face. I mean, again, I'm not against any of the tools, like try whatever you can do to fight off the harm, but we can't rely upon that because then I'll have people who are like, I was digging through my bag and I couldn't find my whistle. I mean, like this is not going to work. We've got to really deal with the moments that are these like human to human interpersonal communication. And sometimes it's not going to work. I want to be clear. It's like some people are just trying to harm you and cross your boundaries, and all the different tactics and no amount of assertiveness is going to be able to stop that. So we just want to be clear that we're not blaming anyone in any way for what they were or were not able to do. Some people freeze, some people fight, some people fawn, which is actually, or appease. That's rational. That is you trying to minimize the harm in the moment, get out, fight, flight, freeze, or like appease are things that we typically see if you're being targeted, or harmed as the human reaction.
So what about the situations where the boy keeps like, trying and you're like, no, I don't want to. And they try again. No, I don't want to. So eventually you're like, fine. Like, and you just cave in because like, they're not going to leave you alone until you just say fine. So like, is that considered consensual or like, what is that?
The answer, the legal answer, the lawyer answer is always, it depends. And so the answer is, it depends. A lot of schools do address coercion. And so that repeat pressure or threats or intimidation is often called coercion in our policies.
Mm.
And so we do address that. We do teach about that. And I think societally we've made some progress on that. So I do tell them, like, if someone says no or seems ambivalent, you don't get to keep pressuring them. And that repeat pressure can amount to coercion, which, at the institutions I've worked at in the past has also been considered a policy violation. So you shouldn't do that. But they're getting, young people are often getting bad advice from TV and film or problematic people in their lives that, like, oh, if you just keep trying, eventually, she'll cave. Like,
Right.
they still tell us that they hear that from people.
Yeah.
But we tell them that that's not what consent looks like, because again,
Right.
the people should want to be there. It should be happening at the same pace. It should be mutual. And you don't want to be in the gray area, or you don't want to be defending this behavior afterwards, right?
Right.
Like,
That
that's
makes
not going to
sense.
look good if what we agree on is that you did keep pressuring over and over.
It's probably safe to say if you're not sure, just
I
don't
tell
do
them
it.
to opt out. There's always tomorrow. There's other
Yeah.
things you can do, that
Yeah.
there will be there'll be another opportunity in their future, Yeah.
Just see
Yeah.
yourself out if there's any
Yeah.
sort of reluctance. But then I
Yes.
could see that goes into like the like, oh, I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
Mhm.
If the boys or men are being taught that, like, oh, if they say anything along the lines of I don't, not that, and then they're just like, oh, okay, abort mission, like the girl likely will be like, oh, it's okay, go ahead.
There is a lot
Well,
of that.
yeah.
There's a lot of that. And, in the US, we see that behavior of, like, making it okay and making people feel better and making the moment less awkward to be really gendered. But it's also like, we see it with international students too, about different cultures who engage with people very respectfully and civilly, which usually is a great thing.
Yeah.
But is this, like, making it okay? And that can be cover for people to get away with a lot of bad behavior, right? Is if they then act like it's a joke, or then act like, because I do have stories where people are like, they stopped for a minute and they said they were sorry, but then they did it again, And
Right.
so then there's this back and forth that is it's really confusing for person afterwards too, because they were like, well, they weren't rude the whole time, but then they assaulted me, which, like, can be a perpetrator's technique, actually, to do it and get away with it. Which gets us into a whole other conversation. But yes, so, like, it's all fraught with risk. And so the more we can talk about them being really clear communicators, like wanting clear communication, but giving clear communication or asking for it, can make this much safer. But if it is enthusiastic and it's mutual, then it's like, then it's that, like, again, that's a safer place to be, right? Like, the enthusiasm,
Totally.
not legally required, but such a great sign.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It really should be the goal.
Yeah. Wow. So I was just kind of thinking about how you're talking, because like you said, this all circles back to assertiveness, women. And like you said, Sam, you were saying a girl will sometimes want to make the person feel better. We're like, oh, well, it's okay. Sorry. I didn't really,
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, we do have kind of like a lot of pressure on us, or at least even if it's just pressure we put on ourselves because of what we were taught growing up. But yeah, like to make the people around us feel comfortable. So what can you say about assertiveness and how assertive, well, you already kind of did talk about assertive is different than aggressive.
Yeah.
And I just want to like kind of go back to that a little bit. I just think it's really interesting. I don't know if you had any more.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we transition a little bit from what we were talking about, I think if someone's trying to cross your boundaries, you can aggressively defend your boundaries, like, you don't have to be pleasant about that. Right. But
Just to be clear, aggressive, we're saying don't fucking touch me.
Right.
Or are we
and
like,
there might be a moment where that is a totally valid response,
okay,
Right.
okay.
But in the workplace, in a meeting, like, if you come in with that kind of intensity, that's going to be aggression that's not going to serve you well, and, or if you're like, if you're navigating sexual harassment across a power differential, I'll totally defend your right to be safe and free from that. But a lot of people won't feel able to summon that kind of like firm response, nor should you have to, you know?
Okay.
And so there might be times when aggressive behavior can match the aggressive behavior. You know, like I think like a boundary violation, that is sexual assault is aggressive behavior, you know, and so you don't have to be polite in the face of that. But because we've tolerated differences in behavior, so, you know, parents really have a role here. If you expect your daughters to be better behaved than your sons, you're contributing to the problem here.
Yeah.
So if you're like, boys will be boys and boys are allowed to be physical and loud and rambunctious and take up space, and the girls in your life are not allowed to do that, that's the breeding ground for a whole host of bad behaviors here, and socialization for women to be pleasant and not assert their boundaries.
Yeah.
So I have a chapter in my book, but I'm a believer that like we should raise angry girls. We should allow women and girls to be angry. And actually, people are much more comfortable talking about their daughters, hypothetical daughters or real daughters. If I say, like, let them be angry, a lot of women are like, yeah. And then I'm like, you too can be angry. Them to each other, they're like, yes, I am angry. But they don't feel like this need to, they don't feel as validated in expressing their anger. And I don't want you to be angry in a way that's like bitter and ruining your life, but I
guess that's, yeah, because that's kind of
we can be angry about.
I agree. I think that's kind of like as you've been talking, because I don't think I really gave you a real question earlier, but it kind of started forming. It's like, how do you, when you're in a situation where you're like, hey, I need you to back off, but you don't want to hurt their feelings either. How do you come back and say, hey, wasn't trying to hurt your feelings. I just wanted to establish like these boundaries.
Yeah.
Without looking like you're trying to flip flop. I guess that's kind of where.
It really depends on the relationship, right? And if you want to do that repair or not, you know, like I do think for women in particular, you know, you are not causing the problem. Remember that, right? And naming the person who names the problem is not actually causing the problem.
Okay.
And I think we forget that ourselves. And I think we forget that in the workplace, you know, because then it's like they think, oh, like who's stirring up trouble? And they think it's the reporting party. It's not the reporting party. The person who tells us about what's going on that should not be going on is not actually the problem. But we sit in this space of like, keep the peace, mind my own business, and then we get confused about who's actually causing the problem. The person violating the boundary, engaging in the bad behavior is the problem, and we got to keep our focus there. And then for you, you know, like you have every right to protect your boundaries. You get these boundaries. They get those boundaries. They need to stay over there unless you invite them over here, you know? And but it does, like the reason I get talk invitations on this is because we are so used to having very teeny tiny narrow boundaries, you know, that we're used to being violated. And so we do have to do the work of thinking like, oh no, wait, I have a right to an egalitarian relationship, to a healthy relationship. I have the right to set some expectations for my mother-in-law about what she's allowed to do in my life or not, or come over or not, or expect from my husband or not, you know. But because we think we have to be nice and pleasant, we let those boundary violations happen all the time. And then it can be done, but it's tough to reassert them. It's easier to build them initially in a relationship, or, you know, it's a teach people how you want to be treated type of approach. If you can do it on the front end, that's great. We could try to do it in the middle of the relationship. You have every right to rebuild your relationship. You have a right to go to your romantic partner and say, I'm not getting what I need. You know, you have a right
to change my mind.
Or change your mind. You do actually, you know, like they might be caught off guard. They might not be happy to hear it. You know, the way things were working for them might be appealing to them, but you do have the right to ask for something different. And so your approach depends on how much repair or maintaining of the relationship you want to do.
Okay.
Right. So like I was traveling, like business travel a few weeks ago, and got in late, and the hotel restaurant was still open, and I hadn't eaten yet. And I mean, honestly, I even do the same as an individual. I was like, I almost never eat in the restaurant. I almost always take it back to the room. So I will be left alone, you know?
That's right. There's times when you avoid
Yes.
just being out in public because you don't want to be approached or bothered and you don't want
I
to deal
don't
with
want to
it.
deal with it. I know too much because of my line of work. You know what I mean? I was just like, but I was just tired and I was like, you thought it was fine. It wasn't very busy. I'll just sit, you know, and get something to eat. And have a glass of wine at the end of a long day. And there's nothing wrong with this. This should be fine. And I eat my, you know, sandwich and I have my wine and I'm paying my check and I'm leaving and all things seem fine, you know? And then right when I'm like setting the check down, a man swoops in and sits next to me, too close, pulls the chair in, you know, automatically is assuming he is entitled to some of my space. And what I thought, even though I know better, even though I really, you know, is like, I knew better. I should have just, you know, taken this to my room as if it is somehow my fault. And none of this was done. None of this.
Not at all.
You know, but he swoops in and he's fine. And again, I'm polite because I don't know, you know, because we're like, we give every individual the chance, like they're starting from scratch, like we don't know where this is going.
Yeah, you don't know his
exactly
intentions.
where this is going. This is going exactly where we all think it's going. And he's really pushy and he's like motions to the bartender who already was pouring me another glass of wine that I didn't ask for, you know, because he'd ordered it over there before he came to sit down. And so it's just sat in front of me. And again, everything's fine till it's not, you know, and we don't want to overreact. And so I was like, what is this? And bartender was like, it's what you were having before. And I, you know, I said, I didn't ask for this. Now, I mean, I do this for a living, so I'm like real assertive. So this might be his mistake sitting next to me. Wrong girl, you know, but he's like, where are you going? And I was like, I'm going to go back to my room. And he's like, why? Why would you do that? You know? And I was like, because it's late and I've traveled all day.
And why do you have to explain?
But we do explain, you know? And so then it's like, I can't just want to do with my time what I want to do. And he's kind of blocked me in, right? Which is normal, right? We're used to this in the setting, except this is not a bar that I chose to go out to socialize, to meet, you know, I mean, like this is Wednesday at like 9:30, you know, in a business travel situation. And he was just really, really pushy. And then he started touching me, you know, and then I moved his hand and I was like, you can't. And then I was like, these are my boundaries and these are your boundaries, you know. And then he finally was like, what do you do for a living? And I was like, oh,
you don't want to know.
From school, you know. But I was just like, oh my God, like you think you age out of it. You think you think you're fully prepared. But this went on what I who know all of this, who practices all of this, let this go on far too long, you know. And then I excused myself to go to the restroom and I went to a different restroom because I was like, this man is going to follow me, you know, like you just have all of the you know, because I excused myself. And so then I saw him try to go to the other one. And so I basically am hiding and waiting for him to go up the elevator so that I can then go to my room by myself, you know? And I was like, I mean, my God, I am 47 years old.
And you're still in that situation.
I am fully equipped at asserting my boundaries and all of this stuff. And he was perfectly friendly until it got pushy at the end. And I said no several times. Now, I don't owe him that much politeness.
Right.
Like I my disinterest. I told him I was in a relationship. You know, I mean, it just kept going and going. And we think this is totally normal. This is like the price of navigating the world in a you know, woman's body.
Yeah.
And I was fine and I was just navigating it. And then when I get back to the room, then I'm like pissed, you know?
Yes.
I'm like, oh, God. Again,
were you fearful like as you're hiding, or were you like just not at the point to where you're like, what the fuck? Yeah,
I was really in that. I was really annoyed, you know, because the bartender was like making sorry faces at me, you know, and
it didn't step in.
The whole room was very clear that I was not interested. This took on a whole dynamic. Turns out there's like a board game conference in town, and there were a number of bystanders who did nothing also. Yeah. So it was just me fending for myself, and I feel very equipped to do that. You know, like I know all the strategies. So I was just like, I guess I could ask.
Oh, board gamer, man. I've been to board gaming conferences because I am a board gamer.
it was great. It was fascinating, but they were very busy and engrossed in
Yeah.
their game at a table,
Yeah.
over there. But there were things I could do. Like I did feel safe enough to do that. And I was kind of like rolling my eyes at the whole situation and debriefing it later in my,
Yeah.
in my mind. And when I was like talking to a girlfriend. But that's why I was just like, oh my God, it's so routine.
Yeah.
It's so routine. It's so typical. And I'm sure this man thinks his behavior was fine.
Probably doesn't even remember, I think, twice.
And he probably doesn't remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Well, I don't want to take any more of your time. And this has been a really great conversation that hopefully
Thank
this,
you.
brings people to be like, oh, okay, well, let's just start speaking up and like making the room a little more uncomfortable. And I just want to share something that stood out with me with the lady that I was talking to. She's older, and I am someone who's always been timid and uncomfortable if someone's looking at me in general. So at first I'm thinking I'm timid that people are looking at me because I didn't like my body. Now that I had surgery and love my body, then I was timid that like people are looking at it and like sexualizing it to where like I was trying to stay covered up. And this elder lady who too has had surgery, and she's very well spoken, very like you respect her when she walks into a room. And she saw me like keep covering myself up and pulling my stuff up, and she was like, she pulled me aside and she goes, "Why are you so fidgety? Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just trying to be like, I don't want to be like inappropriate, and there's like other husbands here and stuff." And she goes, "So why do you have to cover up?" and so she like asked me these questions. I was like, "Well, I just don't want to offend anyone." And she goes, "I work with construction men for a living, and do you know what I do?" And she was like, "If one of the men are staring at my boobs, I say, 'Dawn, am I staring at your dick right now?'" And like she's like, "And I make it uncomfortable." Like, "No,
Yeah.
I don't." So eyes up here.
No, I love that, right? And it's the same message. It's like you should be safe and you should have healthy relationships and you should be able to show up and be fully present and, as your authentic self in all of these different spaces. And I really wish you were welcomed in that way, right? And that we didn't have to do the work. But I want you to feel entitled to all of that. And if that means that, you're asserting your boundaries and you're participating fully and you're communicating clearly and they're uncomfortable, that's not your problem.
Yeah.
That's their problem, right? And a lot of that work is their responsibility. But you're you're entitled, to wonderful things. And so I want you to like go out and get them. And then, but also, don't worry about pissing people off or making them uncomfortable if they're crossing your boundaries.
It's
Yeah.
like Melissa's example, like just ask
Yeah.
a question back. And then
Just ask
when
a
they
question
start
back.
when they start getting weird about it, there's your answer.
There's your answer. They knew. Yeah. And I'm really liking the whole bystander assertiveness that you're
Yeah.
talking about too.
It's
Because
really
we can
great.
watch
We
out
need to like take care of each other and lift
that.
each other up. And
Yeah.
it's really, really key. It's a public health model. It's like it's solidarity or sisterhood model. It is what we can do. So if I am safer in this moment, then I need to do the work that might be a little bit uncomfortable of like making you also safe, or my God, the buddy system. It's the buddy system, that like has served us well for centuries. Like, we just got to do it, but like if you have privilege or safety or assertiveness skills or confidence or whatever it is in that moment, it's the rising tide lifts all boats. Like
Yes.
you've got to take care of yourself, but take care of others.
Yeah. Perfectly said. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is really fun. Thank you for having me.
It's been a great conversation.
I can tell you have so much fun talking about it.
I do. Thanks.
So you have classes that if anyone's interested in gaining up their skills and assertiveness and being more confident and comfortable in these situations, you have courses for this?
I do them sometimes. So on my website, you can buy the book, but I've got some free downloads. So if you're not ready to buy the book, we've got some free worksheets. And then I've got an assertiveness workbook coming out soon, and it'll be available on my website, but on Amazon and lots of different places. So
plug your website. Plug your website real quick for us.
It is drowningintimidity.com.
Of course it is.
Oh my God. I love
it. I
this
do.
word. I will forever be like, I am
Well, it
feeling
took me,
timidity.
it's funny because in the very beginning when you said it, I was almost like, well, wait a minute, what does timidity mean? And I was like,
took me
oh,
a
it
minute
just means
too.
timid.
Yes,
It just means timid. You know, it
was-
made it more complicated, but yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Once you started
No, I like
explaining
it.
like the assertiveness and being timid, I was like,
Timidity, of course. I like it. I like it.
I love it.
So
Well,
Awesome.
thank you so much. And I look forward to our listeners listening.
Yeah.
thank you.
Did you like the episode that you heard today? Great. Share it with a friend and don't forget to rate and review.